Welcome back to Epilepsy Moms. Today we're going to be talking about the MRI, and we have a special guest. This is my mom, and she was an MRI nurse or a nurse in that department. So she's going to come and give us her take on that. Once again, before we start, my name is Summer, and my son has generalized epilepsy with clonic-tonic seizures and absent seizures.
And my name is Liz, and my daughter has focal epilepsy with focal seizures.
So we will get right into it. Can you tell us about your background in the MRI department, how long you were there?
I worked in the MRI department for 8 years, and I worked for a company that I was highly recommended. And actually I came from the baby ICU, and there was 4 other nurses there that worked where I had worked before, and they all loved it. It was a very high-tech, up-to-date company. They had 7 scanners, and they had anesthesia, they did breast biopsies, they did the fMRIs, they did children, they did adults, they did inpatients, they did outpatients, and high standards. I really appreciated working there. In the MRI, what I did was mainly bring the patients in, get them ready for the scan, and reinforced that they didn't have any metal objects on them, and that explained what the MRI was all about and what to expect. And then the job for the nurses was to put the IVs in and give the contrast. And we were there to watch for allergic reactions, which is extremely rare.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
You mentioned contrast. Can you explain what that means for entering, like having to put it in as in the IV?
Gadolinium is the contrast that they use in the MRI, and it is made of a mineral. It's a clear fluid, and it's different from a CT dye because they use iodines, and they have sometimes more of adverse reactions than the MRI. It's very rare, but you can have an allergic reaction, and they want medical staff nearby or in the unit when it's given. And the MRI contrast is given for inflammation, infection, tumor. If they want to look at blood vessels, what it does is it highlights those areas. So they turn bright white, and it shows up microscopic outlines. So it's very, very clear to the doctor. If there was a tumor, it would just shine like a flashlight.
So if it's child going in for epilepsy, do you know what they would see in the MRI? Or
always. If it's a patient coming in for a brain scan for epilepsy, they always do contrast. It's always a possibility that there's a tumor.
Oh, and that could be causing.
It's usually to rule out why is there epilepsy.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So can you explain what the MRI actually is?
It's very scientific, so I can just explain it simply that it's great big strong magnets, and those magnets draw our atoms and protons in a certain direction. It's coupled with the radio frequency waves that are in the coil. Did we talk about coils yet? If we didn't, they are the device that you put over the area that's being scanned. So if you're having a head brain MRI, you'll have a coil over your head. It looks like a cage. If you're having your knee, you'll have one over the knee, and arm, elbow, any part of your body. They always will put something over you that will send the radio frequency waves, and it mixes with the magnet, and that will be sent to the computer, a very special computer that does mathematical calculations and puts out the most beautiful picture you ever saw. It's I told some of my patients, like the abdominal adults, not kids, it's like you unzipped your body and opened it up, and you saw actually what was in there. However, with the MRI, the most amazing miracle to me is that when they take the pictures in the MRI, they do what we call slices, and they're layers. So if you start at the top of the head, working down, then you would have thin slices of pictures, like a millimeter in size. They take so many pictures and you don't miss anything, barely.
So is that I know is, I think, when the machine gets loud, right? Is
Right.
when it's taking
So-
those.
Okay.
layer
Important
of
thing for the
photos.
kids to know is the MRI scan and magnets are always on, but it makes just like a clunking sound when it's not taking photographs. But when it's taking photographs, it's like a jackhammer. And when you hear that jackhammer going, that's when the photographs are being taken. That's when they need to be very, very still. So I guess we could get into that if you want, about how to prepare your child is to let them know that the MRI scan is, nothing's going to move, nothing's going to hurt you. The part of the body that's being scanned goes to the middle. So an MRI machine is like a giant donut, I call it. Yeah, kind of a thick donut, but it's a giant donut, and it so you go in the tunnel to the middle. If you're a brain, if you're a foot, you won't even be in the tunnel. The foot goes to the middle.
When my daughter was going through it, the MRI technician actually came in, and when we were right before we were changing her into her gown, they had said, because she was having the functional MRI, and so she had to be awake through it, and that was really difficult, just because keeping a child still in an MRI machine is impossible. And they had to do it. I think we were in there for over an hour. It was horrific. And they were trying so hard, but they called it a space, like a spaceship.
Mhm.
And so that was really exciting. And then they kept telling her, okay, you have to freeze like Elsa. You have to just be frozen, like Elsa froze you. So it was really cool, like how they kind of put that into perspective for her so that they could get that image, which they never ended up getting. Like they got images, but she couldn't sit still enough to where, because she'd be like, oh, I forgot, I can't look around, and like it was very difficult. But I got to be there the whole time, just making sure, like, remember, you have to sit really still, just kind of reminding her, because it's so hard when she's awake. I mean, when she's asleep, it's different, but with her being awake, it was a lot more difficult keeping her still.
I feel
But
like
they called it a spaceship.
parents know their kids the best. So there have been rare occasions where kids under 5 years old were able to do it awake, but it's rare. So MRIs are set for kids 5 and above that can be prepared ahead of time and hold still. Under that, we do anesthesia.
Yeah.
You did have one, I think you were telling me, that was younger than 5, right?
Yeah.
And she stayed awake.
Yeah, it was amazing because the parents said she can do it. They knew that she could do it. And
That's amazing.
we respect what parents tell us because they know their child best.
Yeah.
But to prepare your child, it's nice to tell them that it's going to be noisy, but what we do is give headphones for music, or for little kids, our facility had 2 scanners that had goggles. So they put on movies like Frozen, or those, and to let them know that when they hear the noise, that's a good thing. The pictures are being taken. And as long as they don't wiggle and move, they'll get out of there sooner. And we have used the spaceship trick for boys mostly. It's just like going into a spaceship. You lay on the table and they put your helmet on, it goes up and then it goes in. And then that's for the Disneyland ride. The rest of it's plays. And then, so it's.
And then what happens if they do wiggle? Like,
right,
what happens to those pictures?
It's not the end of the world. They just have to repeat that picture. So it takes about 30 minutes for a brain scan by experienced tech, as long as it's just a normal brain scan, not the fMRI. But so 30 minutes and you're done if you're holding still. So we want the kids to be very comfortable. We put a pillow under their legs, ask them if they want a warm blanket, and tell them to hold still, but be comfortable holding still so they don't move. If they do move, then the photographer will have to take the picture again. And so what the kids will know is that they'll have a call light to talk to the MRI tech, and they can stop it too if they need something, but that'll make it take longer too. So the MRI tech will tell them on some of the kids, not all of them, this one will be 20 seconds, this one will be 30 seconds, so they can keep in constant communication. Nope, they're never alone. The tech is always watching them and always can communicate with them. But it just depends on the child. Some can do really good and
so what if they're keeping their head still, but they move their feet or their hands?
Yeah, the text will say
Still moves.
the text will say if you have to wiggle your feet, do it when it's quiet. So he'll say, okay, 20 seconds, and there'll be noise, and then that's when they're taking the picture, and then it'll be quiet for a little bit. That's when you would move your legs. And then just a word of warning, tell your children not to cross their arms or legs, because that causes a closed circuit and will cause them to heat up. So we keep the room very, very cold for the MRI machines, and that's why they need a blanket when they first go in, but you tend to heat up with your protons changing, and your body can get warm, but if you cross your arms or your legs, it'll make you very hot.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So just going back to the beginning. So when we came in for our MRI, the first thing we had to do was undress, and you had to put on the gown. And my son was like, that was the worst part for him, was having to wear the hospital gown. Is there a reason that they do that?
Yeah, we went back and forth at the facility because we don't want people to have to undress. But even when they are not wearing any metal, or they think there's no metal, there can be metal. We've had sports bras where there's not supposed to be any metal because there's no clips, and there is a little piece of decorative metal someplace. And then underwear has had little decorative metals. Your sweatpants, we used to tell people, come in elastic sweatpants. Well, where the ties come out, sometimes there's little metal eyelets. And what those metal things do is cause a big black hole in your body. Makes it look like if you had a little hair clip in your hair, you'd have a big black hole in your brain. And so the techs know right away. They go, oh, there's metal. And what it does is it slows it down. They have, our facility was very busy. And so we had people lined up, and if you could get in and out at the appropriate time, we stayed on schedule. But if anybody had to, oh, we have to take your bra off or your underwear off. So, and it's, those things can get hot too. So they felt for safety and for the functionality of the company, they needed to have everybody take their clothes off. Yeah.
Okay, so I think it is good to prepare your child for all the noise, for having to wear a hospital gown, earplugs. You can ask for goggles.
And they'll always have a call light to be able to talk to someone. Mom or dad usually is always allowed to be there.
Yeah, I got to go in the room too. I think I did have to ask if that was okay. But then they were like, yeah, that's
changed
totally
a lot
fine.
of things. So it's,
Yeah, that could have been why.
Yeah.
When my daughter's on under anesthesia for her MRIs, I don't ever get to be in there. So I know that a lot of times they're very like, no, there's no need, there's no need to be there. So if your child's going under anesthesia, a lot of times they'll just have you sit in the waiting room or in the room that they bring the child back to.
Yeah, you don't have to worry. When they're on anesthesia, there's an anesthesiologist at the bedside, or either in the room or with us right where the MRI tech is. There's a monitor on your child, heart rate, respiratory rate, blood pressure, oximeter, and there's a nurse there. And then there's a runner person your child's surrounded by help.
Now, do they all have a nurse there? When we went, I know we had two techs there doing it, but there was no nurse, I don't think.
Yeah, MRI departments don't have to have a nurse as long as there's a physician that's down the hall, which is true for our facility. The radiologists who are reading the scans are the ones that will respond if there's not a nurse there. And I don't think there's very many MRI companies that have nurses. Ours was different. For a brain, there is no preparation except for to prepare your child for an MRI, telling them that, it's loud and it'll be longer if they move. And it's usually about a half an hour for a brain, and they'll be getting contrast. And his reward system goes a long way. Boy, if you can offer them, hey, we're going to get an ice cream cone after this. If you can hold real still and, let them give you the contrast. Usually most of kids don't feel anything. It's just they can use the tiniest needle and it goes in a vein. So it's not like a shot in a muscle. It's much easier. Important thing about the contrast though is, as safe as it is, there is one situation where you would not want to have the contrast in that, and they will do a history on you for that, is the kidney failure. If you have kidney problems and your glomerular filtration rate or your GFR is too low, they will not give it to you. Can cause some real bad problems. And did I tell you that the contrast is out of the system within 24 hours? Over 90% is out of your system in a day. And one thing you tell the kids when they leave is drink lots of fluids. That'll flush it out even better.
Okay. That's to flush
Gotcha.
out the contrast.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
They'll feel coolness when they get the injection. They'll feel coolness going up their arm because everything in the room is cold.
And I know
Now, if they're
go ahead.
Now, if they're under anesthesia, what are some things that parents need to look forward to, like the coming into the appointment, I know that there's like no eating and drinking, like that kind of thing.
That's the main thing. When we have them come in first thing in the morning, it's nothing after midnight, so that there's no vomiting, no chance of that.
Yeah.
And then to prepare the child, it's kind of, from a child's point of view, a scary thing because they go in and mom and dad is there, but you got the anesthesiologist, you got the nurse, you got the tech, and everybody's surrounding this bed. And the mood is kind of set by the anesthesiologist. I had one that was so sweet. She always made the kids feel so comfortable and told them a story about a castle and riding the horse up to the castle. And some of them are so good like that. And they have to have the mask over their face. They don't have to have an IV first. They go to sleep with the mask and then they put the IV, so they don't have to worry about that. But they get to pick out the flavor they want the mask to smell like. Did you do that too?
Yeah.
So they try and get them to feel as comfortable as possible, but it's kind of a scary.
And I know with the MRI, a lot of times, because she's always under anesthesia, just because she's still so young, they always let me get to go help her put the mask on. And that's something that they're really comfortable with letting me do. I don't know if it's because we've done it so often. A lot of times, we've done it. I don't even know how many times we've had MRIs, but they have always let me put that mask on her, or at least like be there to hold her hand while they put the mask on or something.
That's right.
They've always let me be by her side, and that's been really cool that they've been so accommodating for that.
She's seeing you when she goes to sleep.
Right.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So,
and they do let them bring blankets. Like, so if there's a specific, like a Snuggie or some sort of like blanket, they do let them have them on their lap. So when they wake up, it's still there.
Oh, that reminds me that another thing is we started scanning everybody. And I don't know if all MRI places do this, but we have a wand that we will scan. So if you brought in a blanket, we wouldn't be able to use it unless we wanded it first and made sure there's no metal in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
and I know you've said before that one of the things you liked to tell the kids was, okay, you're king for the day, you're queen for the day.
Because some of the text will say, I want you to hold still like a statue, but it's hard. If you're stiff and you're scared, it's really hard to hold perfectly still for 30 minutes. So I always told them, we want you to hold like a statue, but be comfortable. So you're the king or the queen for the day, and you're going to get a crown over your head. And we want you to tell us, do you need a warm blanket? Do you need a pillow under your legs? And here's your call light. You call if you need anything. So just to try and make them feel like special.
Yeah. Yes. And they get to set the pace, it sounds like, they get to set the tone and the mood and the pace, and it's
power, and they feel better.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All kids love power.
What about like side effects?
Oh, yeah, it's very rare to have side effects. There is studies done that have shown sometimes there's headache, nausea, dizzy, on some people later on, like the next day, but it's rare. There's a strange phenomena. You want me to tell that?
This phenomenon happened to my son. It's supposed to be really rare. I guess the nurses don't really, or people don't really talk about it very much.
Yeah, because you don't want to
Scare
plant the
someone.
idea or
Right.
scare somebody, but
So maybe don't tell your child this is like the
just
secret.
for the parent to be prepared for
Right.
it.
She told me when we were going in, so I was prepared. My son had no idea, and then he did have the side effect. So it was kind of nice and
Oh my
comforting for
gosh.
me. Well, it was comforting because I knew why.
Yeah.
Because I knew the secret, so I
Yeah.
knew he was feeling this way, and I knew it would go away.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, it's a weird thing. Some people rarely will, seconds after you give the injection, within 10 seconds, as you know, you've given the injection, you start to put them back in the scanner within 10 seconds, 20 seconds. I'm getting sick. Some people don't even get that out. They vomit. Some people are just sick to their stomach terribly, and some people are vomiting and vomiting. And within 30 seconds, they're fine, gone. So it's just a weird thing.
It's almost like it goes in and it comes right out.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's a situation where most of the time the coil comes off and the kid sits up, and you give them, everybody's scrambling for a bucket for them, and didn't need it, I don't think. Did he?
my son ended up getting very nauseous, and that he was being put in the MRI and then was pulled back out because he was like, I'm really sick. So they pulled him out and they were like, are you okay? And he's like, my stomach hurts. So they had to take everything off, have him sit up. He just took some deep breaths and went away, and then he got to go back in.
Yeah. Sometimes it ends up like that.
Yeah, I
That's
was
nice.
really glad.
You had a very good tech, and she knew not to leave him laying down like that, because yeah, he's not probably going to get much better.
Yeah. Any other things that you think are important for parents to know when they're going into an MRI like this?
Just to be supportive, be there. You can hold your child's hand while they're getting the IV, and you can offer them ice cream afterwards. That's very helpful. One good thing to know as a parent is that an MRI is so much safer than a CT, that because of the radiation in a CT, but the drawbacks are it's longer than a CT and louder. So just be prepared yourself, because it's surprising. As a parent, you'll get earplugs too.
And a CT is a
The CAT scan,
right?
yeah.
Do they show the same thing? Because I know we had a CAT scan to check for tumors. I think it was larger tumors, but the MRI was going to show smaller ones. Or something.
Well, they do show soft tissue, but not as intricately as an MRI. MRI is much clearer for soft tissue. And CTs are usually for emergencies, to rule out anything very abnormal like a tumor. They would be able to pick that up. But an MRI is better for you.
Okay.
That's good things to know.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to ask the next one, or you want me to?
What's your favorite part about the job of being a nurse?
Oh, just people. I love working with all the people, old, young, sick, healthy, being able to help them feel relaxed and not afraid, because usually people come in very nervous if it's their first time. So I really love that part.
Yeah, that's good. And then do you have any stories you can tell us, or a memory of something that happened?
Well, one of the hardest things for me was, walking into a child and telling them, okay, I'm going to give you an IV now. It's so we had this one girl who was a preteen, and the MRI tech, she was a young lady, like in her 20s, and kids could relate to her. So she was really good with the girl, and the little girl kind of related to me, and she did fine. She didn't know anything about the MRI, hadn't been really prepared well, but she cooperated. Her mom kind of threatened her, get it done or you're going to come back. And so she got halfway through, and that's something I didn't say is you do half of the scan without contrast. Then we come in and give the contrast and finish the scan with contrast so the doctor can compare. So we pulled the girl out, not knowing that the mom hadn't told her anything about it. And I said, hey, we're going to give you your medicine now. And she goes, what? What medicine? And I go, well, we're giving you the contrast now. And she said, how are you doing that? And I said, well, yes. Gonna put a little needle in your vein. And she jumped out of it. She pulled the head coil off and jumped off of the table and said, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, no, all the way around the room away from us. She was petrified, the poor thing. And her mom was on her saying, get back in there, you better do it. And the tech and I worked really well with her and told her, hey, it's up to you. You're the boss here. You make the decision. If you're ready to get it, we'll give it to you. You will have to come back if the doctor absolutely says you have to have it. And so and usually an MRI tech wants that patient off the table when they're 30 minutes, if it's, a 30-minute scan. And she was great and this took 15-20 minutes to calm her down and get her back to the table. She wouldn't let us get near her. So she sat on the table and we asked her, how do you want to do it? We'll do it your way. And she says, well, can I do it sitting up? Because she finally came to the determination she didn't want to come back. She would take it. And she just was a trooper. Put the IV in, gave her the medicine. She went back in the scan, and yeah, she did terrific. So that was a happy ending. I'll never forget.
Good for us to know as parents that it is important we prepare our kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Right. And sometimes you'll come in for an MRI scan and the MRI tech will want to put the IV in ahead of time. Some will do it halfway through. So it just depends on the tech or the facilities rules.
I think we had ours done first. I think he got the IV, then went in, we did the first half, he came out, they added the contrast, he got sick, came back out, and they finished.
Kind of nice to have it done with.
Yeah, you don't have to get the needle halfway through that way.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. We so appreciate all this information. This was great. I think it's going to really help parents to prepare their kids for what's coming in. I know for me, like when the doctor said you're going to go get an MRI, I was like, okay, but I wouldn't have prepared my son at all because I had no idea what it was or what it meant. Thankfully, I had her here to help us and to get us ready. Otherwise, we would have been like that other little girl walking in and not knowing.
Scary.
Looking out.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm so glad you got to come.
All right.
And I really appreciate it too.
Thank you. It was nice to be here.
If you have any extra questions for Summer's mom, please comment below. We could answer any extra questions that you might have specifically directed towards the MRI. I'm sure she'd love to respond to those. So go ahead and leave the comment below, and your story is not over.
Your story's just begun.
Bye.